Lunatics like you have it easy, while citizens like me go through hell. The impotent rage of a detective trying to pin down a murder suspect. There's one problem. Mamaya, a scruffy psychology student, hasn't technically murdered anyone. He haunts Tokyo, claiming to have no memory of his identity, a blank canvas for others' projections. Men and women come under his spell, confiding their deepest frustrations. A trail of murders ensues, all identifiable by the same cross-shaped slit across the neck of the victim, all attributable to different perpetrators. The perfect puzzle for workaholic detective Takabe. Takabe confronts Mamaya, but will he too fall prey to the spell, or can he break the cycle just in time? Is Mamaya an arch manipulator, or simply making visible a wave of latent resentment in Japanese society? Kiyoshi Kurosawa, no relation. Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Kyua was released in 1997, announcing a renaissance of Japanese horror thrillers that get into your mind and under your skin, notably Takashi Miike's Audition and Hideo Nakata's The Ring. Korean director Bong Joon-ho of Parasite fame described Kyua as one of the greatest films. Kyua. Let's stay off that topic. Described Kyua as one of the greatest films ever made. You are listening to MoobTube, the podcast that today turns 25. The great effort of two noble young troubadours of filmmaking. We're going to have an assessment of the pod, a sort of mission statement. But firstly, Owen, can you tell me what drew you to Kyua? Because it was a suggestion of yours. And can you tell me whether it fulfilled your expectations?
I suppose a fascination with the look of it. Because I've always been quite, not resentful, but quite dismissive of the horror genre. Mm-hmm. Because I think it has one of the worst fandoms in film. Just the most dog shit kind of... Oh, well, you know, cause I watched... So basically when I was watching, I kind of went on a deep dive on Kiyoshi Kurosawa. Director I really respect, really like. I think Kyua is a fantastic film. And watching some of the videos that kind of horror channels that have kind of on YouTube that have made about his films, just dissect them and turn them into such like tawdry things, exercises for like sort of A-level film studies shit. And it's like, oh, well, actually, you know, it's about lighting in the scene. And they do sort of these weird charts and shit. And it's just... They're obsessed with anatomizing what horror is, and you know, horror films are interesting because, you know, horror is never really about the thing it's about. It's like one of those genres where you can say there's an about here. With Kyua, it's very obviously a film about kind of anomie and abjection and modern loneliness. You know, because like you said in the intro, the suggestions that the psychology student makes are really tapping into kind of latent subconscious violence that's at the heart of modern society that Japanese politeness is kind of pushing aside. The detective Takabe is unable to fall under the spell of this violence, and the student actually says to him, says, "You're amazing," a couple of times to him, because he tries to seduce him.
It's pretty close though. I mean,
comes close to it.
He sort of says, "You hate your wife. You find
and he tries, and he's actually he wears his violence on the sleeve. Like he has his violent outburst. It's the only time you see anyone be violent in a film in a kind of organic way. And he's like, "Fuck, it didn't work on you. My hypnosis didn't work on you because you are kind of already processing it." And he's saying, it's better to process your social anomie, your kind of violence and your disdain, than to kind of repress it and let it burst forth. So that's what attracted me to it. I think also a parallel, because this came before Ringu, which kind of defined a generation of American horror films. The feedback loop between Japanese cinema and American cinema, you know, because Kiyoshi Kurosawa learnt horror, so he claims, off American films from the 40s and 50s.
And the noughties films learnt them off him.
Yeah, exactly. So there's this kind of weird like feedback loop. It's weird because like he has a specific, people often call him like the maestro of like horror film. And I liked them because I dislike jump scares and all of the kind of tatty, pointless, like the cheap gimmicks of horror films, like The Grudge and things like that.
Would you say that that's a characteristic of the Japanese, the J horror wave?
I think it's important to generalize about Japanese culture because it's never been done before.
No, but I mean, like, because I was thinking about the Ring and Audition, which are both films which are profoundly disturbing. And I don't think there are any jump scares in those films. I think they are just...
They're slow.
They're slow burners. Yeah, the first hour of both of those films is kind of harmless.
Yeah, and for the most part, they're not even gruesome necessarily. No more gruesome than perhaps Psycho was.
Yeah.
And that had a cultural context where Psycho was really uchiha and kind of really unpleasant. But yeah, I think this kind of J horror genre is interesting because it taps very, very comfortably into kind of social alienation and social concerns. I think Ring was obviously about the dangers of technology. It's like the horror film in the age of mechanical reproduction, or the ghost in the age of mechanical reproduction, right? It's like Benjamin. And I think Kurosawa is kind of tapping into that as well with social alienation and kind of Japanese politeness, as we're talking about. And I think the way he realized this was most fully in a film he did called Pulse, which is actually better than this. It's a weird they don't have it on Mubi. They chose Kyua because it was kind of his breakout, but Pulse is truly terrifying film. Similar visually, it's quite a dirty. I think he's shooting on film. It's quite dirty. It's quite kind of poised. It's very elegant and quite messy at the same time. I think Pulse is about, similar to Ring, Pulse is about the internet. Ghosts coming through the internet into the real world. And it sounds really kind of like gimmicky, but the delivery is insanely unsettling because it fulfills Freud's uncanny, or the misunderstanding of Freud's uncanny, I suppose, this uncanny valley. And so I think he taps into something that's like very modern and very real and very lived, whereas a horror film is like, it's about an ancient witch that's coming to kill everyone in horrible ways. It's like, I don't care about that. It's not scary. It's scary when you're confronted with something like, everybody has the capacity to be a murderer and to be a monster, which is kind of what...
I'm always surprised when people who make horror films don't learn like why horror films are good. It's like, it seems like the most basic thing, or sometimes they do it in this, like, I felt like Midsommar was like...
Did you like Midsommar?
Not really, no.
Ari Aster.
Yeah. I haven't seen any of his other films, but I did think it was like... It was too Bately actually doing the aboutness thing of being about this particular Swedish tradition that seemed quite sort of stereotyped and obscure.
I'm here for Swedish rights. The horrible mischaracterization of Swedish society.
Yeah, but free the COVID. But then like really deep down, it's about the crisis of relationship, and like but it was almost like too bait in that case.
It was very girl boss almost, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it's like she's girl boss because she's using ancient occult magic to take down her
exactly. But like
bastard boyfriend.
The most interesting thing about it was that she was like fucking needy and anxious and horrible to be around. Yeah, whilst also being like incredibly pang.
Yeah, she was very pang. It's the Swedish
Florence Pang, but like that was the most interesting thing about Midsommar was like how like hot anxious girls are.
Yeah.
And then when it got into this whole like ritual girl boss thing, it was just like rubbish. Anyway, we're not reviewing this.
No, we're not reviewing Ari Aster, but I think so.
But like the principle of a horror, I don't really like horror film that much, but the principle of a good horror film is that it's about one thing, but like deeply about really something else. Another. Which in a way, all good art is kind of using an indirectness in that fashion. Like my favorite horror film is Possession by Zhurovsky, which is like a film about divorce, about a relationship breaking down. At its core, and then on a kind of bigger level, it's about this demonic possession, and it expresses
interesting. This loss of control,
exactly, and it expresses psychologically what it's talking about much better than it could if it was just a straight down the line divorce drama.
Exactly, and it's interesting for me because, like I said, I have a kind of tortured relationship with horror genre. It's not something I really touch, to be honest, because I find the fandom to be awful, neeks. Wary of being hexed.
We're not neeks, of course.
No, of course not. Criterion Collection, etc., etc. They're neeks. Criterion Cast.
The neeks are always the other people.
They can't be me. But no, I think Kiyoshi Kurosawa is really interesting as this kind of appellation of being the maestro of the horror genre, and he does understand it really well because, like you said, there are no jump scares. There's fades and slow perceptual changes. There's a really interesting scene where we have the detective Takabe, and we also have a kind of psychologist who's researching criminal psychopathy. He goes into deep kind of classic, and is partly susceptible to the student's kind of hypnosis. He ended up killing himself, I think, in order not to kill anyone else. He kind of handcuffs himself to his bed frame, I think. The implication is that he's aware he's been hypnotized and is canny enough to kind of stop that from happening, so he kills himself. And there's a really good scene where he has there's these like dream sequences buried in it, and you see he has this vision of seeing Takabe, the detective, slowly dissolve out of the corner of a room, and he's very good. And it's what happens in Pulse, and I'm kind of now talking about Pulse, but there's a really terrifying scene in Pulse where one of the characters goes into this kind of abandoned empty house, blah blah blah, and this woman slowly appears in the corner of this room. Rather than giving us to jump, it's just the camera stays static. It's just we slowly become aware of her. It's incredible. It's incredibly scary. And it has he has this awareness that, horror isn't about surprise. It's about feeling uneasy. And he's just this master of unease and disease, I suppose, as well. I think Cure did that really well because it's a beautifully shot film. It is full of moments of lingering horror, because like there's a moment where Takabe, his wife, inexplicably is like mentally ill in some sort of capacity, and he comes home and sees for a moment her dead hanging from like the beams of the house, and rather it being like this kind of quick jump, he kind of sees it, she's just hanging there. Then it goes back to him. We just see him kind of fold to the floor, kind of unable to, like, non-vocal, kind of so traumatized by it, and it just kind of lingers on him, kind of making these sub-vocal howls. And that's why it's good, because it's uncomfortable, because it lingers on these things. That's what I liked about it. I think this was like the ideal. Also, I think Mubi shifted us this time around, because their horror offering this year is pretty paltry. There wasn't much.
I didn't even think of this as a horror, really.
No,
I sort of thought of it as a thriller in the spirit of Hitchcock. Yeah, but with a sort of supernatural element.
Because there's no supernatural element. There is. It's implied. It's not supernatural.
Not supernatural. Yeah, sort of psycho spirit.
Yeah, because when Takabe chases the kind of source of this mesmerism back to its base, it's like a doctor in late 19th century Japan who's kind of figured out the trick of how to hypnonize people. So there's no...
Yeah, it's very much rooted in science. And
very much rooted in science.
The science of psychology.
And again, the dangers of modernity, I suppose. So yeah, there's no like supernatural force. There is in Pulse, which is the other Kurosawa film. There are other Kurosawa films. Kurosawa became boring, though. For me, if you watch his more recent films.
How many films do you watch back? I
like 5, 6.
Really? Wow.
Deep.
Great.
They become quite like Sakurai.
I feel like I'm interviewing you about Kurosawa, because I just watched this film and I've never seen any films by him, and I would
watch Pulse.
Okay.
Yeah, Pulse is really good because it drills into the same territory. But I think when it's weird, a lot of directors do this. The switch to digital footage actually ruins their vibe.
Really?
Killed his vibe. Yeah, it's too clean. It's too weird, and it's too
interesting.
Yeah, it doesn't. He loses like the tautness and the weirdness of these earlier films. Like I watched Journey to the Shore, which is like a really nice concept, but ruined by just kind of saggy writing, and it's really like hammy score. And that's about the ghosts of the dead returning to the living, because the living haven't been able to let go of them. And it's kind of, the concept is an old one, but it's kind of well done in the first half an hour, but just really drags it out, and it's not very good. Creepy is kind of dull as well. It's just, I think with Kyua, I think he's one of those filmmakers. It's like I don't know. He's like one of those. I don't know. It's like he was creating films at the perfect moment at the turn of the millennium, and he's a filmmaker who was just perfectly suited to making films around the turn of the millennium about modern anxiety.
And it was an instant classic, wasn't it, Kyua?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's really
often
like
held up as being one of the greatest horror films ever made.
So I never heard of it. It's weird.
No, outside of that, I think it kind of one of those films that like ripples outside of like the. Well, I mean, what did you? Cinematically, like how did you find it? You said you don't adore horror films. It's not something you really go for. What did you get from it?
I mean, I was very sensitive to the visual, the Tarkovsky. There was like a Tarkovsky vibe in how like drippy and
the dankness,
slushy it was. And yet it was serving this very clear like narrative purpose. There was, what I loved about it actually was, and I didn't even really clock this until I read the description afterwards, but I it felt it at the time, was how when he's hypnotizing people, he uses like fire or water or like some elements, kind of elemental thing.
Yeah.
So he'll light like a lighter or something, and that concept I liked a lot. That there would be some sort of meditative element to it. I'm obviously interested in things where there's like a critique of modernity, I guess, and using a device to sort of I guess also I'm talking in this really abstract studenty way, but like use like critiquing psychology as a discipline, and critiquing like the idea of saying this person who's like learned all about psychology is in a way kind of becoming a narcissistic manipulator. I liked the character of Mamiya very much.
The student's great. He's such a malevolent, because he has this kind of vacant, like shaggy do kind of vibe about him. Like he turns up at people's houses, and the trigger that he uses to mesmerize people is asking them about themselves. He's like, tell me about yourself. And it's really interesting, because it's like he's asking people, and often people don't know how to answer when you see it happening. They're like, oh, I'm a teacher and I'm married to so and so. They can't answer in a deeper way. And he's pointing out a hollowness in people. And it's in that sense, it's like, again, a social critique is more intelligent than just like modern life is bad. It's actually kind of talking about this hollowness at the heart of people. It's like people have these voids inside of them. So it's in a way it makes it a very cynical cinema, but I kind of liked that about it. But like I said, I felt like watching this and Pulse, and then I also watched Charisma years ago, which is really good, about this like poison tree, a similar detective vibe, but not horror, just a kind of like unsolved thing. Then going to his more recent films, and they're just a bit saccharine and weird. Like sometimes directors peak at a particular time. There's like a constellation of like moment and their style that kind of emerges perfectly, and when they try and carry on making films, it just doesn't pan out. It was good. It wasn't the spook fest we were expecting.
No, it was. I sometimes get this with films where I can't fault it really, but it doesn't. I was just a bit bored for most of it.
Originally you were like quite apathetic about it, I think.
Yeah,
and then you thought some more about it.
Oh yeah, I did. I liked it for a bit when I was. Now I'm a bit drunk. I'm going back to my more apathetic self. But I was reading about it and thinking, bloody hell, this is actually solid.
It is solid,
and
I hold on to that. Like
it does what it. Yeah, it does.
What's your ultimate horror film in that sense?
Well, Possession is my... Possession. Yeah. What else do I like? I mean, I haven't seen The Wicker Man for years, but
Wicker Man is good.
That's sort of that's a
Wicker Man is hot.
That's a touchstone for like how to like use horror to to really
because
say
it's folk
something.
horror, it's like ambient horror.
Yeah.
It's just like, because the incomprehension of it and the ancientness of it is really interesting.
I guess in terms of horror, like I think Hitchcock never really made a horror film, but I think he has like a horrific sensibility. So I think like films, even like Vertigo, which is like you would never really call that a horror film, has like it has that.
But it's got the franticness.
Yeah, it has the franticness and the it has the kind of sine waves of a horror film where it goes sort of expands and what other horror? I sort of like exploitation-y stuff a bit, but not that much. I'm just looking at my Blu-ray collection, thinking about like are there any horror
scientific approach?
Are there any horror films?
I feel like actually the ultimate horror film for our times.
Come and see.
No, The News.
Oh, thank you, Sacha Baron Cohen.
Very nice, as he says.
My wife.
His wife. He's got a wife, but in an accent.
Is Eraserhead a horror film?
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, I've been watching.
Lynch is
I've been watching Twin Peaks recently, and that is like.
Twin Peaks is totally Twin Peaks does the about thing because it's like about American suburbia and American modernity.
Yeah.
Scratch beneath the surface, and you'll find something very dark.
Yeah.
Subconsciously buried there. Oh yeah, that's horror.
The more I watch Twin Peaks, the more I'm like, bloody hell! Like David Lynch really does just make the same film again and again. Which is
he really does.
Which is squad goals, to be honest, for an artist. Like, just it's if it ain't broke, don't just nuance it.
And he is he's smoking that loud, but he's he is like but he's like committed to the bit. But they are great.
I love the bit.
And when I go back to Twin Peaks is horrifying.
Yeah.
Laura Palmer's screaming face, her like eyes rolling back into her head, like it's good. The arm that bends backwards, so many elements of it are just.
And he understands
the Freudian uncanny.
What's genuinely disturbing, uncanny. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly that.
I feel like it's time for us to do our list. Okay, so at 25, Owen, what do you have?
Seasons in Cancy.
Oh! Terrible John Berger documentary. Awful.
Documentary, which was awful.
It was so fucking sickening.
Was the logic there? Was it like hatred about the way it kind of spit on Berger's corpse?
It just was so narcissistic and so and it took advantage of Berger being like a lovely person who's nice to everyone by being horribly
lovely John. Well done. Oh, John.
Awful. We had a good rant about that. My 25 actually is Lolita, the 1992
no way
version. I just thought it was so having like read a bit of the book and watched the Kubrick thing.
It really doesn't do service to
so misguided as a project. I just thought, why did you even do that? Whereas at least the Berger film, I thought like you could see why one would want to do that, whereas like even embarking on a Lolita remake with Jeremy Irons just seemed and it was disturbing as well. Like it was actually profiting off it was sexualizing and kind of like nodding and winking in exactly
a way it was not. Yeah,
it didn't have a comedy element that could relieve it from itself.
Okay, so 24 in 24th place. Go on, what's your 24?
Seasons in Cancy.
Okay, well, we talked about why mine is somewhat controversially Love.
Oh,
Gaspar, no way, Gaspar.
Hold on, I'm gonna turn our mic stand because I keep peeking. I keep making noises.
These peaky finders over here. Peaky blinders. Because love. The more I thought about it, the more I kind of mulled on it. I was like, actually, love is just a really. It
must be love.
It must be. It's a very self-involved. Like it's not interesting. Watch porno.
Right. Well, I thought we came around to it when we reviewed it.
You did come around to it, but
maybe we just
now wiping up afterwards and feeling the void at the centre of my life. 23.
Go on.
I feel really unfair about placing this here, but I think it's just because it didn't leave a lasting memory on me. Was Olla.
It was quite a good film. It was a good film.
I dumped it down there because What was your 23?
A Couch in New York.
That's what I missed off my list.
Oh, is it? Okay.
But I will happily replace my 23 and sub A Couch in New York in for Ola.
Because it's not good, A Couch in New York.
No, A Couch in New York was a deeply perplexing thing that I don't understand.
It was rubbish, But we had a good chat about it with Daniel Neofiti, friend of the show.
That was a really good episode when I was out of country.
Yeah, it was quite a hectic episode. I don't think I said much in the episode. I often, when I bring two friends together, I often tend to like hang back a bit. I quite enjoy just like...
You were holding us by the reins.
Yeah. You're both dear friends of mine.
Dear friends of the pod. Number 22.
The Commune.
Same.
Hey!
We'll put some sound effects in there because I think The Commune was such like a limp dick of a film. It was just
rubbish.
nothing. It was just.
It was very like well made in quotes, but yeah, it didn't.
It was like
Didn't get the baby washed.
the Danish equivalent of Aaron Sorkin. It had that look.
No,
it
but
looked like an Aaron Sorkin.
But
film.
like Aaron Sorkin's better.
But it looked like an Aaron Sorkin. film.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
It had the look of Aaron Sorkin film. 21.
Showgirls.
What?
Yeah.
You love Showgirls.
I did not love Showgirls.
Oh, okay.
I thought Showgirls was pretty rubbish.
Okay, mine was the Black Power mixtape.
Oh,
gonna get some hate mail for that one.
Racist. I think I'm making a podcast with a racist. I'm not quite sure what to do about that.
You are. Why didn't you know? I told you that the first time we met.
I just thought you were saying ninjas.
No, I put it in 21 just because it's like, how can it compare? Yeah, it was a documentary.
Yeah,
it's the only documentary we've done, really.
It's true.
Hey, number 20.
Time of the Wolf.
Time of the Wolf
By Michael Haneke, which we reviewed quite recently. We had a great time reviewing it. Listen to the review, but I didn't think it was that good a film.
I put Lolita in that place.
Okay,
yeah, because I was like, I only did 1992 Lolita, because I
can't believe you think that 1992 Lolita is better than Love by Gaspar Noé.
Guess no. I got more out of 1992 Lolita, out of a deference to anything attached to Nabokov.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're just biased.
Soiled his memory. Okay.
I soiled quite a few things during Love.
I bet you did. You dog. 19.
Bacurau.
Ooh, interesting.
I was sort of.
That's so long ago. That's old.
There was the second episode we did, yeah, and it was a lot of people had told me very emphatically, "You must watch this. It's really good." And I didn't really vibe it, and I remember just feeling
it could have been better.
Feeling sort of dissatisfied with it in quite a
the trailer was really good.
I don't remember the trailer, but yeah. Udo Kiyoshi in it. But yeah, it had this obviously like really sort of important colonial message, but I just didn't really vibe that.
I think we over like this was early days of the pod. I think we over analysed the kind of anti-colonial message, which I don't really think in retrospect was really there. But yeah, we live and learn, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, I think everything's kind of about colonialism these days, isn't it?
I think so.
17.
Wait, I didn't tell you mine.
Oh wait, sorry, you didn't.
My 19 was High Life.
High Life.
Yeah,
another early move to
the first episode.
Yes,
High Life is in a moose bush. It was like a
moose bush.
A moose bush. I've been to restaurants, Ralph.
Oh no, evidently.
18. Black
Power mixtape, mate.
Very interesting.
Wasn't very good. I went on a Hinge date with someone who she looked at the pod and she said to me, shout out if you're listening.
Probably not.
She's a nice girl. But she said that Black Power mixtape was in her top 3 favourite films of all time.
Okay.
She's white. I don't know if that's real. I just thought it was like, but I don't think she's like a film fan really, but I just thought like it's like got a value to it as like a record of all these like great woke people speaking, but it's not like a great
film. James Baldwin, I'm Not Your Negro. Excellent documentary.
Yeah, that is pretty good. Although I felt like I'm Not Your Negro was like a sort of TV series squished into a film. I thought it could be longer.
Black Power mixtape was fun. I learned something from Black Power mixtape, but I wouldn't be up there in the top 3.
No, of course not. And I wouldn't watch it ever again either, unless there was like an.
Are you still talking to her?
No, I am talking to her a bit. So occasionally, as a way of showing that I did
stop calling this number.
Yeah, I mean, if she's listening to this pod, then she's got a problem.
Yeah.
Very nice person. Very nice. I'm sure she's not.
Okay. All right, let's go. Let's keep going.
Hard enough getting people.
17.
17. House.
Yes.
In the house. That was another guest pod. We had Daniel on.
Daniel's ranking low.
Yeah, films we reviewed with him did not.
Were a bit shit. Okay. I had House of 17, which was an amusing entertainment.
Was that an amuse-bouche?
It wasn't a amuse-bouche. Amuse-bush.
The mighty,
more like,
the mighty bush. Amuse-bouche. Yeah, it was just. It had good effects, but it was just.
It had good effects. It was fun. 16.
High life.
Interesting.
Oh,
Mine was, this is going to be a zinger, but India song.
Oh,
yeah.
Shockingly,
it was
disdainful.
A turgid film.
I remember when the way I did these lists is I went through the films in reverse order, just scrolling down the Podbean feed, and then every time I added a new film, I would put it above or below whatever was there.
And that might be a more intelligent way than I did it, which is why I've missed films off this list.
Oh right, you just wrote down every film that you could think of.
No, I just tried to remember what films I've done off the top of my head.
Yeah, so I remember a moment early on where for some reason I was like agonizing over whether India Song. I was thinking, is India Song better than Time of the Wolf? And then gradually loads of other films fitted in between India Song and Time of the Wolf, because a lot of the ones I just put were like quite early on ones.
Yeah. And
yeah, I do think India Song hasn't come up on my list actually yet, but
okay, well let's go number 15.
Number 15, Humanité.
Wow. You've changed, man. You've changed.
Have I changed?
I thought you loved Humanité.
I didn't love it. Listen back to the pod. I didn't love it. It was a really interesting. I remember us remarking upon the pod as being an interesting moment of conflict between two very aligned fellows.
I thought we were aligned, but apparently not.
I know you fucking shag Humanité. It's probably number one on your list, but
I'm not going to confirm or deny those allegations.
But I don't know. I just it didn't light me up, but I could see it was good. It's a little bit like Kyua. Neither of us have announced. Is Kyua?
Kyua's not on this list because it's
on
the
my
list precedes the review, because I didn't know how I'd feel about Kyua until I talked to you about it.
Oh really? Is that how much you depend on
my You're my father confessor, and
right.
I'm here doing Hail Marys on my knees.
Kyua is on my list. Sorry.
Okay. So next 15.
Wait, no. What's your 15?
Jester. And actually, I regret placing it at 15 because I actually think it's a lot more interesting than I gave it credit for. Oh god, it
was hard work though.
Should a film
really be that much hard work?
And actually, I think the fact that it was hard work is what pushes it down my list, because you've got all of Portuguese history to play with there. It's almost like an anti-nationalist film because it just makes me want to like carpet bomb Portugal. That's the only way I can describe it.
Wow. Where did that come from?
It's coming out now. Number 14.
14.
Actually, we should say 15 is the, just to remember, and a gentle jab at our French colleagues, the age of consent in France is 15. Fucking perverts.
14 for me was India Song.
Okay, so I wasn't that far from you.
Yeah, I did really sort of, again, I loved wanted to like it, and I loved what it wanted to be. But yeah, it was pretty hard to watch. I wouldn't watch it again in a hurry. But I think maybe if you just have a lot of red wine, or just like, I don't know, I don't really take that drugs really, but like something to really thanks for the recommendation. Drugs.
We stopped for a kind of a message from our sponsors, Squarespace and drugs.
Yeah. Podcasters, when they do the really integrated things.
I hate the kind of like, me and my wife actually have been sleeping badly because we hate each other. But since we've had our kind of dreamy mattress.
I have a Casper mattress actually. It's all right. Yeah.
Is that one up there?
Yeah.
Okay. We're not in the same room at the moment, so obviously I'm just kind of describing what I think Ralph's room does. Yeah.
We are in the same room. It's a tier 2 violation of the highest order.
13.
13. This hasn't come up on your list yet.
Go on.
Silent Kitty.
Interesting. Mine is Bigamist.
Now I weirdly want to swap those, even though Bigamist is much further down my list. Maybe my listing system didn't work after all.
I don't think it did. Is it just the order we did them in? This is what this is looking like.
No, I just
transcribed.
I must have had a moment where I put put Silent Kitty. No, I think, but Silent Kitty was. I I mean, to quote Igor Toroni Lalic, it was much better to listen. Friend of the show, friend of the pod. I much preferred listening to you guys talk about it than the film itself. I think we did one of our best podcasts talking about it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that podcast.
It was fantastic. It would go down in the history of podcasts, but it's
right up there with 3 Hours Screed by Joe Rogan
and Alex Jones. Shout out to Joe Rogan. Yeah, so Silent Kids, yeah. So I think I don't think it was that good a film, really. I think it was, and it was a bit of a. And I also shout out to my friend Mikey who made a comment. I don't think he'll mind me saying this. It's during the scene with the SS guards looking through the windows at the disabled and Jewish and Gypsy people having sex with the Aryan prostitutes.
Hot.
I don't think this is the sort of scene directed by someone who's ever taken a shot in the mouth for money.
Tinto Brass, I don't know though, to be honest.
No, I think she's a surefire top. But this was an interesting discussion that we had, actually. Like, it was a rare case of the pod generating, not a rare case, but like an interesting case of the pod generating an equally interesting discussion afterwards, just with a friend, which was like, being a film director is quite a top thing. To do, like, and I say this as a film director and a top, as someone who likes to put my dick inside people, like being a director, but it's very conducive to that in a sense. It's like
directing is just an extension of the male anatomy, isn't it? The lens is really.
This is something we try and dissect in our.
The
podcast.
lens is the glands.
The lens is the glands. I prefer long glands when I'm shooting. There's literally so many innuendos to go for.
Which is interesting that they come so readily to mind, though.
They come so readily to
mind, but like cinema is what it is. Cinema is it lends itself very easily to sexual metaphors. And
yes,
the place
money
of
shot,
the director, the money shot. The place of director is a very sexualized top behavior, right? I think it really does play into that. And the actors, there's a sub element with the actors, and we really celebrate these actors who kind of become tops in a way, the kind of Daniel Day-Lewis's, the kind of actors who overcome their sub status and perform as tops.
Something I'd like to explore more as well, especially with the discourse around women directors and like representation. I do feel basically that it's a bit of a Thatcher thing where like
girl boss,
like any woman who ascends in directing and film direction is like really butch, which is great, fine, but it is like
Catherine Bigelow, for example,
Catherine Bigelow, Ackerman, like these people from art house to mainstream, like they're not like femme, they're not like, which is fine, it's cool. I don't know, maybe I'm talking shit, like whatever.
No, but it's interesting that Bigelow, for example, talking about a recent, sort of a contemporary, really prominent contemporary woman director, made her name making Hurt Locker, Zero Dark 30, making hyper masculine films about war that really celebrate.
Like Claire Denis, like all her films are kind of about
Claire Denis,
like they're quite cold and masculine.
I think it feeds into the masculinity thing anyway. But we digress.
We do.
Let's just go through this quickly. Like 13, I had Bigamist. Let's go to 12. Kyua, interesting. I didn't include Kyua. I put The Aviator's Wife down at 12.
I would have put Kyua further up the list. Further, like, less. I like, for some reason today, I'm like really not vibing Kyua, but I was kind of liking it before.
I stopped liking it as much when I saw his other films.
Weirdly.
Or it kind of made me like it more in some ways, but I actually put Aviator's Wife at 12.
Okay.
Because I included all three Romer films separately. I disambiguated them.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
11.
Good for you. 11, Ola.
Ola, interesting. Ola does linger. It
was pretty solid.
Film.
It was kind of, it had integrity. And I remember we liked it a lot of the time.
UconianBrides.com.
You've got to remember what you felt at the time. Like the podcast it's easy to misremember films, and I think the podcast held us to account, and we did really like that film. We did
actually, yeah. I remember.
What's your number 11?
Talk to Her. Pedro Almodovar. Hasn't lingered in memory at all. So it's actually generous to put it in that place, I think.
Oh, really? Okay. Talk to us a bit further up mine. Maybe we'll discuss my liking of it later.
Okay.
10. Jester.
Yeah, you rate it quite high. I think through the act of talking about it, you came to.
Yeah, but now I'm a bit confused. Maybe I want to swap Jester with Sal and Kitty, because
do what you want.
I would definitely rewatch Sal and Kitty before rewatching the Jester.
Bet you would. You dog.
Yeah, you notice I haven't mentioned love yet.
Yeah. It's right up there. You really haven't, have you? So we know what's number one. Yeah, I did.
Is this how we fall out? My number one is love and yours is humanity.
Yeah, well, so 10, right? I put Boyfriends, Girlfriends.
Okay.
From there. A really, really nice film. Interesting film.
We are getting to that point in the list where we are really quite fond of the films we're talking about.
Yeah, we're really fond of them.
Because the standard's pretty high. Most of the time we were reviewing a film we liked.
Yeah, because there's still an element of selection because, you know, at any time Mubi has, 30 films live and then the library. So we are kind of choosing films that we, have got a predisposition for, basically.
Yeah.
I feel no shame in that. Own it.
Number 9 for me was Love.
Okay. I respect you still. You're still a credible witness.
I there was something like cinematically, like the ambition of it, and I don't know if I'd watch it again, to be honest. But like, one of the reasons I wouldn't watch it again is because it is porn, basically.
You should just watch porn.
And I'd prefer to watch Love than watch porn.
Fuck.
But I would just
It's Murphy's. So you like Murphy's voiceover?
I love his voiceover.
Yeah,
I love
really
the sort of weird jump cuttiness of it. I love the sense of ambition about it. The sense of like male anxiety and male sort of like discomfort within a space of like.
Sorry, I laugh. I just keep thinking about. I love France.
Well, hey, I mean, 17. I mean, it's not quite as bad as some of the
That's
stuff
15. It could be worse. Roma films. She's past it. Yeah, 17 in France.
But they're all like 19 in that scene anyway. But Love. Yeah, no, I guess I wouldn't watch it again because I'd just probably start having a wank, and like that's not something I don't know. I mean,
no one can see that. It's a podcast.
I don't know. It just seems like kind of a it's unnecessary film. The fabrications of the film, the kind of the aesthetics of dick and balls and mouth kind of overcame what's actually quite a boring story. Yeah, I didn't feel like I learned anything from watching it. I didn't feel any differently about myself by watching it. I suppose I didn't feel different, but I felt like some sense of catharsis with the character of Murphy. I felt seen by the character of Murphy.
Okay.
I don't know why. People can.
Well, he's quite relatable. I think he's a relatable figure for like a tragicomic kind of young millennial male who's like into films. Like you're going to identify with Murphy in a big way because he's like a misunderstood, brooding. He's Francois from Aviator's Wife, kind of, but a bit more sexually adventurous. Yeah, but more outwardly sure of himself, although inwardly like pretty fearful and jealous. What number are we at? 9.
So that's 9. What's your 9?
Showgirls.
That is high up. For
very high.
For like not a very good film.
I just enjoyed the shit out of it. Like I think Showgirls is Paul Verhoeven like directing a film quite out of sync with his norm.
Yeah.
It's a perfect send up of American capitalism and greed. And for that, I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I had a
Why
great time.
did I have a bone to pick with it? I remember watching it. I watched it with my flatmate Carla. Shout out to Carla, and she was really opposed to it for reasons.
Was it because of the objectifying?
Yeah, she was opposed to it for reasons I don't really agree with.
I get.
Like, because I think she was taking the objectification too literally, or like I don't know. Like I don't really have a problem with films because it's obviously critiquing that world.
Yeah. To show is not to condone.
But then also, and she had a problem with the representation of people of colour. Again, which is another one of those things where it's like
I don't care about that.
No, Black Power mixtape was on number 25. But I mean, like, that all those characters in that film, all the like non-white characters were kind of
they were very
heavily sidelined or like literally raped. but in a way that's also again talking about that world and the but
Yeah,
it wasn't
which
sort
is
of
perhaps quite realistic.
Yeah, but it was like an off-center aboutness. Like it wasn't about that. It wasn't like 12 Years a Slave, like about that. It was just sort of like throwaway. Anyway, I don't know. I just didn't. I'd spend that whole week watching really good Paul Verhoeven movies. Starship Troopers, Basic Instinct.
Yeah, it is the least good of the Paul Verhoeven films.
Like that golden period in America where he was just making films.
When he
like
was getting this strange Dutchman was getting
fucking racks
of money to make like
and then
Starship
he made
Troopers, RoboCop. Like he was making banger after banger. Total Recall.
I just think Showgirls should have stayed a commercial failure.
Yeah,
it feels like
it
feels like gentrification.
It doesn't deserve being revisited.
Middle class gay men like it now.
Yeah, it shouldn't be revisited. It's like I think it's wrong to say it's this now. We can see it's this avant-garde experiment. I don't think it was. I think it is what it is. But okay, so number 8.
I put The Bigamist there.
Interesting, Ida Lupino. A really interesting film.
It was good,
actually about male needs and vulnerabilities. It was kind of ahead of its time.
It was. Yeah, she was a bloody top, wasn't she?
Lupino. Fuck yeah. She's strong MILF energy from...
She would have fucking pinned you down,
I hope so. I'm going to build a time machine for the sole purpose of going back and trying to woo Ida Lupino.
Yeah.
Unsuccessfully.
She's
even got peen in her name. So that's what you need to know. So for me, actually, 8 was Salon Kissy.
Oh,
a film whose ambition I loved. And I think I've always held that the post-war confrontation with the history of Nazism and fascism, this great juncture, which was state-organized murder of millions and millions of people, and which was a highly aestheticized phenomenon, and it was justified through aesthetics. Often needs so much investigation and so much examination. I think Salon Kissy did it in a really interesting way. Rather than being gloomy and dark, it was kind of fun, and I think is an interesting contribution to our understanding of an incomprehensible evil visited upon millions of Jews and gypsies.
That was really sincerely put.
But I really believe
about
it.
Essentially a porno.
About porno, yeah. But I really believe that. I really believe
no,
the
you're absolutely right. And we had a great convo about it.
Yeah, and I think we had a really good conversation. I think the seduction at the heart of fascism, and it bears some similarities to Kyua. The smallness of things. I think Kyua comes at it a different way because Kyua says it doesn't take much to make people do violent things, whereas Salon Kissy says, well, actually, you need to do a lot of there's a lot of edging that happens before you can get someone to do horrible things. And they're kind of saying a similar thing, but the stroke speed is different, But let's go. It's number 7.
Talk to Her.
You really put that high.
Yeah, it's my favorite Almodovar film. Yeah, I liked Talk to Her when I first saw it, which was like many years ago when I first got into films, and I liked it again this time. I found it had a great economy, a great aesthetic. It had
very vibrant.
Yeah, very vibrant and sort of like as vibrant as it was disturbing. I got into a bit of trouble with a couple of my friends for saying that I thought the rape plotline was justified, but I do think it was. I think that the character facing the consequences of his misplaced deluded desires was narratively
it made sense.
Logical and kind of true in some sense.
It was a natural progression for that character. That character's obsession, I think, to lead to a crime rather than just a kind of, because the stakes are serious.
They're
serious stakes actually, and I think it's to not have that. It's just to go. It's just a passing fancy. It's not about crushing someone. It is about literally crushing them.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the way to put it.
What's your 7?
7, Mulholland Drive.
Oh. Now you're going to get in hot water for not putting that higher, aren't you?
I might do. I feel like there have been all Lynch projects are incomplete, and because he's a very incomplete man. And we said earlier, like, he has a remarkable consistency across his films because I think he's never actually quite said what he wants to say in the right way. Mulholland Drive has the same thing, you know, it's a failed TV series that he made into a film. The incompleteness at the heart of it is part of what makes it fascinating, because it's got these interesting loose ends. The detectives, for example. It's great. Number 7. That's high on the list. That's an honourable place. It's not top 5. It's top 10.
Yeah.
What's
That's
yours?
a great film. My number 6.
Your number 7.
That was Talk to Her.
Okay, your number 6.
My number 6 is Wind.
Yeah, well, I mean, Wind is phenomenal.
It's a great, amazing film.
Don't watch Bellatar, just watch Wind. And you get same
7
fucking
hours
effect.
with Zayn Tango or 7 minutes.
Okay, so my number 6 was Pauline at the Beach, Romer. Beautiful.
Okay. You've spent all your Romer chips now.
I've cast the chips on the floor on the table. Of all the Romer films I watched last week, 4 or 5 films.
Great podcast, listen.
Great podcast. That was my favourite.
Yeah,
it was the most complete.
It is the best one
of Romer. And as Igor said, a really good starting place.
Absolutely.
With Romer as well.
If you don't know Romer, watch Pauline.
Number 5. What's your number 5?
Number 5 was Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, same.
Hey, my guy. I was like worried you would have put it higher and you would have had a go at me for not putting it
what a fantastic way to represent war in these kind of mythic, lyrical, poetic terms in this transformative Dante-esque journey. What's not to like about Apocalypse Now?
What's your 4?
Wind.
Very good.
Yeah. We're passing Wind now. What's yours?
Structure of Crystal.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
I noticed it hasn't come up on yours yet.
Hasn't come on mine yet.
I mean, let's talk about it when it comes up on yours.
Lucy. Okay.
Number 3 for me does complicate the list structure a little bit. Number 3 is the Romer comedies and proverbs.
Okay. No. That I think. And for you, what is the representative Romer of those 3?
Pauline at the Beach. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. No, let's just say that then. I mean, it was just really. I suppose the reason I lumped them all together is because I watched The Green Ray as well, and I just saw that whole week as being like this amazing immersion into Roma. And like one of my favorite things about doing this podcast with you is like that each week seems to have this sort of theme around it, and I just like talk to all my friends like, oh yeah, I'm like really getting into this director at the moment because of this podcast I'm about to do, and it's like
a good launch pad.
A conversation and a connection relates to like an immersion in a person's work.
Ladies and gentlemen, you don't get that on a Criterion Cast. When you listen to Criterion Cast, it's like,
I don't.
I've actually unfortunately listened to the Criterion Cast, and if anyone who subscribes to the Criterion Cast or is represents the Criterion Cast, like
end your life.
Quit while you're behind. No, I agree. These films are all really interesting launching pads, which is why a really good bit of advice you gave me in screenwriting was, don't try and be too much about something, but that doesn't mean films can't be about stuff. Don't try and do it in a heavy-handed way. And
so indirectly.
They're all really interesting launching pads to discuss shit. Like, Apocalypse Now is a really good discussion of like masculinity, and
the colonial position as well.
And the colonial position, yeah. So let's go. This number 3.
Yeah.
Structure of Crystal, Christoph Zanussi. Because
I really thought that'd be your number 1 for a bit.
I was really debating
because you made it the Twitter cover photo for MoveTube.
Because there were 2 men. I was like,
it's true.
That's me.
Bonding.
I love Zanussi. I went on a real Zanussi binge that week, and I've still gone back because there's a lot of Zanussi on movies. So I've watched like 5 or 6 Zanussis now.
Did you buy a Zanussi washing machine?
It's actually a brand of washing machine.
Yeah, it's looks like one of the biggest ones, like that and Bosch. Bish Bash Bosch. No, I haven't bought a Zanussi. That's a ridiculous suggestion. But I think have you bought like a box set? And I was like, yeah. So I don't fuck about it. The day Ralph Pritchard lost his mind. Totally wild. I'm gonna have to work with her. Okay, what?
I'm gonna have to work with her.
Pleasure's all mine. Okay. Number 2. Mulholland Drive.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, so talk me through why Mulholland Drive of these 25 films is the second best for you.
I think it really brings you into a world. It had this amazing kind of thematic coherence that I don't think I'd appreciated the first time I'd seen it. It was sort of about desire in this really strange, abstract way. I just really got it. I mean, with Lynch, it's not about getting it, but I really allowed it all in. And it was like all of the best contradictions, like disturbing but sexy, like violent but soothing, like all of using genre and narrative, like incredible dramatic constructions in a way that's really obscure and strange. And it sort of talking about it taught me a lot about like the failings of my early student, like when I was like 12 and stuff, like making films, like trying to be like David Lynch and missing out all of the, like forgetting to do the dramatic tension and the narrative and just being like weird.
Which is what I did in my college film years.
Oh, we all do.
But you reach for these complexly symbolic arrangements, but it's like he has a purpose. He's not just kind of showing something because it looks weird. There's a weirdness that plucks at the heart of, like, it might be modernity or American suburbia, or kind of with Elephant Man it might be sort of Victorian sensibilities or whatever, and I think that's really worth referencing. Sorry, I was just lost in a reverie there.
I've just realised what your number 2 must be.
Humanité.
Yeah. I was genuinely like worried it might be the number 1.
Rep my boys in Normandy. I loved Humanité. I know you didn't rate it as highly. It had a lasting impression on me.
Yeah.
I think it's a really complex, interesting film about empathy and compassion. And it's really interesting to see a take on the detective police procedural that really wasn't one, and did everything it could to kind of trip over its own dick in a really interesting way. Again, to
talk about aboutness and indirectness.
It's interesting. It's really interesting. It is kind of bleakness as well. Having grown up in the Normandy of England, I can relate strongly to it.
What is the Normandy of England?
Suffolk, yeah. Or Kent, you could say it's another Normandy of England, but I think Suffolk is more on the nose. So we've come to our number 1, which must be the same film.
It is, yeah.
8.5.
8.5 by Federico Fellini.
By Fellini. Because how could you not rank that?
Yeah. That was the best film that we reviewed.
It
was a great pod. It was a real leap forward for us.
You're right, and it was a kind of a point. It was a point for us in this retrospective, where we expanded our purview. And 8.5 is just, everyone who makes art and creates stuff ultimately spends quite a lot of time thinking about how to do it and why they're doing it, and confronts kind of sometimes complex, sometimes quite straightforward kind of roadblocks. And 8.5 just visualizes that and narrates that experience of creating art so imaginatively and so beautiful. And there's so many parts of 8.5 which are just mind-alteringly beautiful. Him meeting the ghosts of his parents in that kind of train yard, the scene of the bus with men and women's arms hanging out the windows, a scene which is repeated at the beginning of Falling Down,
which is the kind of it's interesting that there were sort of like movie films. Occasionally me and Owen both watch a film that isn't on movie. And we just talk about it privately.
And share it with you. That's the premium episodes.
Yeah, Falling Down was one of those. We both watched Falling Down the same week and got quite excited about it.
Yeah, because Falling Down is an exceptionally good film.
Yeah, it's great.
And there is that wonderful reference to 8.5 in the beginning. And I think, again, what is it about Fellini and 8.5 that really excites you?
The pure cinema of it, the rhythm, the image and edit together, the fact that it so naturally absorbs the logic of dreams, which is something very few films achieve. They're very much like, this is a dream sequence now. That it really, or they become totally fuzzy, dreamlike entirely, and lose a kind of rooting in like the dramatic urgency of both dreams and life.
It's also really fun.
It's really fun. It's got humor and sadness and like anguish and euphoria.
That is a film for life for me. That is one of those films that I can always reliably watch. Will never be bored by. I can just. It's a joy every time I watch it.
So before we go, I guess I just want to talk a little bit, frankly, on about the missions. The mission statement's a bit capitalist, but like we wanted to do a pod. You had the idea of doing a movie-based film pod, which kind of saved me from my inevitable cancellation because I was sort of pushing for a more cultural commentary, politics one, which would have been absolutely dire. And so we decided to review movies. We're both huge fans of movies. We both make films. We're trying to make a film together at the moment.
We haven't talked about that publicly.
I've personally, I'll just quickly speak for myself. Like, I find it a really important process to approach this conversation in terms of being a fan of films and a maker of films, and always to look at the films in terms of how like if something's flawed, like what would you do differently? Like how does this? What's the sort of like aesthetic logic of this, and how does it benefit us to learn from it? And when something's really incredible, like really focusing in on some of the details as a maker, but also I think it's been helpful for us just as people, as guys, I guess, to kind of talk through a medium that is like problematically very masculine, and also beautifully very masculine, and try and sort of be with that as film fans and as men, and that's been the kind of shadow aboutness in a lot of our discussions.
I think that's true as well, because one of the themes we've returned to is masculinity and about confronting our needs as men and our identity as men. It's interesting to have a platform to explore that through film. I think it's been really useful in a purely kind of like ambient psychological way, having the routine of doing this for the last 25 weeks. 25 weeks.
Half
it's
a
been
year,
really, half a year has been invaluable during lockdown, which has been, psychically traumatic. I think I described it when I was tweeting the other day, but saying it would have been endlessly abject having a kind of consistent thing we could do. And it's been really good to think through films, which is something I often consume in kind of maybe sometimes too academic a way. My failed PhD, abandoned PhD, let's put it that way. But there's an interesting kind of examining it, knowing we're going to have a kind of off-the-cuff discussion, which is going to be very loosely edited, if at all, where we're going to talk about it on the fly, which is exciting because you do a lot of preparation in order to do that. It'd be a lot of reading and watching and thinking, but then when you're kind of in the ring talking about it, it's interesting what kind of stuff surfaces. And it's led to some really interesting conversations, sort of like I think when we talked about Mulholland Drive, it was a really fruitful conversation about techniques of watching Lynch, which was like a really valuable discussion. I think we nailed it. And we talked a lot about meditation and transcendental meditation, which was really interesting and really useful. And also just like finding filmmakers I really like that I didn't know existed before. Janussi, for example, was like, there's a lifelong friend, same with Romer as well. I was like, thank fuck, I kind of might not have made that leap to them, because there's a list of, as long as my arm, of films, of directors who I want to get around to, and they weren't on that list. So, it's kind of nice that it's forced it's also made some value out of my fucking movie subscription, which was like rotting on the shelf slightly. So that's been valuable. But yeah, this is only the beginning.
It is, yes. MoveTube will continue, as will the pandemic.
They are.
I don't know which one you're more upset about. I also think that all projects, all institutions, and this is we've created an institution out of our friendship and out of our ongoing discourse. But I think they must, all institutions must sort of disband when they reach their when they
become decrepit.
And I think we've got a lot more steam left in us, but I think we will probably reach a point where we want to just make stuff.
Yeah.
and just get on with,
It's sometimes-
or express ourselves in a different way. And I think we'll know when we've reached that point.
Yeah, we're going to become porno directors.
Salon Kitty too.
Salon Kitty too. I mean, that does lead to some housekeeping because obviously, episode 26 we'll be recording next week. We're going to have special guest Matthew Turner.
Talking about Melina by Werner Schroeter.
Werner Schroeter, based on a novel by Ingmar Bachmann. Bachmann. Kind of continuing on some threads we picked up with Haneke, Tom the Wolf, in terms of Austrian post-war consensus or ambiguity. So yeah, Matt's going to come on. Matthew, I should say. Matthew's going to come on, and we're going to chat Austria and abjection.
Is he Matthew when talking about him as like a public figure?
I always refer to him as Matthew.
Yeah. He's
Matthew. Yeah.
That's really exciting. It's going
to be really good.
I haven't seen the film yet, but I'm very excited to.
I've seen it already, but I don't want to play my hand. You're going to have a lot of fun.
Okay.
So I don't want to play it too much. But obviously, in the meantime, we've got Halloween coming up. So I wish everyone a spooky pandemic.
Yes. Yeah.
It's pretty horrifying already. It's like, what could you?
Yeah, it's really quite disturbing that. I mean, I've never enjoyed Halloween as a thing, but
no, you're not. You're not like. Whereas
it's quite disturbing that it's not really happening this year.
Yeah, I'm very pro Halloween. I always have go to a big Halloween party every several if I can Halloween parties. So I feel.
Bereft of the
bereft.
Spooks.
Yeah, I've been robbed of my ability to go and listen to kind of repetitive techno in a warehouse for 6 hours in a poorly fitting outfit.
Well, dear listeners, stay spooky.
Stay horrified. It's the only way.
Thank you for listening.
Peace.